wide range of cost.
Sorry, do you not have to have a PCR?
Show up there, say for 6 months, something to show that you have positive in the last 6 months. And that way, it was easier than testing.
I have a testing thing, but it's
they get a new training. You can any establishment without being vaccinated. An hour and 40 minutes from my door to
To respect those who are checking in online. Use my outside voice, he says. Yeah, I believe I'm on. How can you hear me in the back of the room there? That's great. Okay. Oh, lots of thumbs up. Before I call the meeting to order, I do want to remind everyone that per the State of Washington Department of Health guide, unless you really truly have a medical exemption, we really appreciate you wearing your mask. I know that it's old and it's frustrating, and I know that change is coming. So really, please, mask on. Unless you have a medical exemption, I'm thinking that that's really important, and particularly important is that if you notice what we've got on our agenda, we have some celebrations coming up, and we really would like to not have to follow the state requirements and switch the meeting to online. So thank you for masking up. It's super important. So at that point in time, I will go ahead and call the meeting to order. Our flag salute is Mr. Derek Sarley.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. Secretary, every board member is present. Looking for a motion for the approval of the agenda.
I make a motion for the approval of the agenda. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Vote. All in The next motion is for the consent agenda.
I make a motion to accept the consent agenda as written here.
We have a motion and a second for the consent agenda. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? All righty. At this point in time, we have some people that we want to celebrate. So I will turn it over to Mr. Garcia.
Yeah, I think Kristen Superintendent Gardia and I will tag team tonight. I'll ask Mr. Gardia to come up here up front. Tonight we are recognizing 6 outstanding teachers for being named Golden Onion Award recipients. Each of these educators will receive $1,000 to use for classroom and instructional improvements. Longtime Walla resident and former teacher Sue Gillespie and her husband Mike established the Golden Onion Award to provide school supplies, equipment, and professional development funds to Walla educators. The Golden Onion Award is presented annually to district teachers representing elementary, middle, and high school grade levels. The Gillespie Teacher Development Fund is a component fund of the Blue Mountain Community Foundation. The Gillespies say they are thrilled to support these dedicated Walla teachers, and we are indebted to their kindness and generosity. And I encourage everyone here tonight, and maybe listening online, to consider supporting this worthwhile endowment to ensure its legacy continues for decades to come. And we'll see in front of you an opportunity with a QR code even to support the Mike and Sue Gillespie Golden Onion Award. This is so incredible. We thank you so much for their leadership and their support for the incredible staff we have here in Walla Schools. So now, let's bring these 6 recipients up, and Mr. Gardia will present them with a certificate for their recognition tonight, and hopes to hear back from them soon about how they're going to be allocating these resources to support their kids in the classroom. First, from Green Park Elementary, Rebecca Bachman. Come on up, Rebecca. Come on up and stand up there also. We get a nice big group picture with Mr. Gardia and maybe Ms. Gillespie as well. Next is Sue Schultz from Garrison Middle School. And Shannon Jones from Pioneer Middle School. We have Chris Bland from Lincoln High School. Shannon Ahrens from Garrison Middle School. And last but certainly not least, Jose Beleche from Garrison Middle School. Again, so proud of these 6 incredible educators we have. Thank you to both Dr. and Mike and Sue Gillespie for their support. I hope that both of them, or one of them, or both of them will come up here for the group photo with us. And please, folks, please take
That's
it
super sweet.
and you supporting this incredible fund that these 2 folks helped proffer many, many years ago. Let's give them all a big round of
cool.
applause.
There's a lot of very special people in that group. Yeah. Communication.
I think we have a legislative update first.
The legislative update first. I see that. Number 2 on special program. Let's go ahead and
Marie, can you hear us up there? I think you're muted still.
Yes. Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, let me let me get that. Hopefully you can see me all.
Yep.
Okay, and what I'll share with you is that I absolutely wish that that I was with you tonight, and I also wish that the cherry trees were looking as beautiful as they are behind me, but they're not there yet. So fall, spring, we had some beautiful weather this weekend and last night, last weekend, and today. So it's been kind of nice, but been stuck indoors, working on the session. So I thought what I would do is we are halfway through the 60-day session, and thought tonight that I would share a little bit about the process, kind of our deadlines that we've got coming up, And then also what I'm calling the big three bills that I've been tracking and we've all been tracking this session. And then hopefully if there's a little time, answer your questions. So today at 5 p.m. was the last day for bills to be passed out of the chamber in which they started. That means that the House bills had to be out of the House and the Senate bills had to be out of the Senate. The Senate is actually still working on the floor. They are doing the transportation budget. You may have seen the proposal for $16.8 billion and the different packages that's related to that. So the Senate is working on that. The House actually, their last bill was about the Student College Grant Program, and they have adjourned until tomorrow. So the committee meetings have actually been on break for the last week and a half, and they start work tomorrow again, bright and early at 8 o'clock. And they actually will go, policy committees will go through a week from Friday, so through February 25th. And then that's the deadline for bills to pass out of the policy committee. So again, House bills that have been transferred over will need to be out of the Senate policy committee, and Senate bills will have to be out of the House policy committee by the 25th. And then if they have to be out of fiscal committees, by the following Monday. So we're really in a compressed schedule, kind of a race to the finish. March 10th is the last day of the regular session, and I see absolutely no reason for them to go any further than hopefully midnight that night, if even they go that long. Coming up tomorrow is the state's revenue forecast, the February forecast. So the last forecast was in November. And I just saw a preview. Looks like revenue collections continue to be up. So that is good news. That is really the last piece of the puzzle that legislators wait for before they unveil their budgets. So revenue collections have been steadily up, and that is a very positive thing, but there's a huge amount of pressure on those increased dollars. So we're looking for some K-12 funding stability. And there's also like teacher COLAs. It's kind of a wonky thing to talk about, but when the legislature adopted the McCleary fix, they tied teacher salaries and educator salaries to IPD, the implicit price deflator, thinking that that would be lower than CPI, Seattle CPI. But with inflation, the way that it's been, the IPD is actually, we're hearing now, maybe 5%. And that means that it's 3% over what they had projected, and a potential at least $1 billion more that the state will need to come up with for the 22-23 school year. So that is something that's putting a lot of pressure on. The legislature is also very interested in addressing homelessness and affordable housing. And then there's just a lot of bills around general economic stability, trying to get folks out of the pandemic in a good way. I expect we will see the House operating budget is supposed to come first, and we'll probably see it next Monday. They usually need about 3 days back in the workroom to get the budget totally put together. And they also don't like to have budgets remain over a weekend. They hear from constituents on that, so they don't like to do that. But this week, what we will hear is we will see the Senate capital budget. Now, we don't have any budget asks this year in the capital budget, but that will be released on Thursday. There's a public hearing scheduled that day for 4 p.m. And then the House hasn't shared its release date. They actually were scheduled to meet on this Thursday as well. They canceled that meeting. Their next meeting is next Monday. So we'll see if they do both an operating budget and a capital budget, maybe even a transportation budget all on the same day next week. So we are in the middle of a biennium, just as a reminder. And so these are not meant to be full-scale, brand-new spending plans, but they're really meant to be adjustments, kind of changes to caseload. So again, with enrollment decline, that is an adjustment to the caseload. It's also about emerging priorities, things that maybe they didn't know about, and really emergent types of issues that have come up. So looking at disasters, so there is some money going to flooding and things like that that happened with some of the recent rains over here. So turning my attention to the big three are enrollment, stabilization, school staffing, and transportation funding. So enrollment, I think you have heard from Dr. Smith that enrollment is down this school year. Your district isn't unique or alone. The average for the state is about 4%. Our messaging this session, and we have been meeting with legislators, both your 16th district legislators, your area legislators, as well as legislators who are in key budget and policy positions. Our messaging has been your budget and your staffing was adopted last spring. And those fixed costs really haven't changed just because your enrollment is down. So Superintendent Smith has been able to bring some really great stories about what you've done with some of your kindergartners and your first grade classes and how the value of bringing in some of those additional staff is making those class sizes very small. And that resonates, I think, with some of your legislators who understand the need to protect your funding this year. Starting last month, though, your apportionment payments decreased, and they'll continue to decrease if the legislature doesn't intervene. The House and the Senate have different approaches, but most legislators agree that K-12 funding needs to be stabilized at least for this year. So the House plans to address their enrollment stabilization in the budget, and that means they've scaled back the bill they have. House Bill 1590 is only about stabilizing enrichment levies and LEA. However, they do stabilize it for the 2023 calendar year and the 2024 calendar year, and they tie those enrollment rates back to the 2019-2020 school year. The bill passed out of the House 77 to 18, so Representative Rude, Representative Clicker voted for the bill. Representatives Dye and Schmidt, I think if a redistricting comes through, might have a portion of the ninth, they voted no. The Senate hasn't voted their bill off the floor yet, but they don't need to because the House has acted. So the Senate version would actually stabilize at 50% of what they're calling the low enrollment impact. So it's mainly 50% of the difference between the 21-22 school year and compared to the 2019-20 school year. So it would also stabilize school levies and LEA, but only for one calendar year, the 2023 calendar year. School staffing, so I think both the House and the Senate have been hearing for years that this is a problem. If you go back even to 2010, and there were desires to increase school staffing for positions like school nurses, school counselors. Now they're finally catching up. Superintendent Smith was actually on a panel, I think it was in 2019, that was talking about this issue. So it's kind of like better late than never. But the House actually passed the bill. It's House Bill 1664 by a vote of 73 to 23. So again, Representative Rude and Clicker voted for it. Representatives Dye and Schmidt voted no. But it really is about improving staffing ratios for school nurses, school counselors, school psychologists, and for social workers. And like I said, the Senate ratios are a little bit higher than the House in these four categories, and they do plan to start the phase-in sooner. The Senate's bill is 5595. Again, it hasn't passed the floor, but they don't need to because they can amend the House bill to do their ratios. So the big difference between the two is really the cost and how much money will be spent to improve the ratios in next school year versus how much they'll roll forward for the 23-24 school year and then the 24-25 school year. It's not cheap. I will just say that to do what they want to do in the 22-23 school year, it's about $170 million. And then to roll it forward into the 23-24, it's actually about $600 million. And then in the 24-25, it gets up to 700 million. So it's not small numbers, and that's why they're trying to figure out the size of the box, basically. There is one thing, both bills do create this new category. It's called physical, social, and emotional staff. And they put school nurses, the counselors, psychologists, social workers, classified school safety staff, and parent involvement coordinators into a bucket. And districts will have to demonstrate that the money they're allocated for those positions actually is spent inside on those positions. And then finally, the legislature recognizes that the STARS transportation funding formula has been out of whack for some time. It's constantly underfunding what it actually costs to transport students. So this year, both the House and the Senate have bills that would specifically call out costs related to 3 categories of students. So students who are homeless under the McKinney-Vento Act, students who are in the foster care system to preserve that stability of homeschool for them, and then transportation for students with disabilities that is required in an IEP. And so those are the first 3 areas where they're going to start, and then they will turn their attention to kind of really working on right-sizing the funding formula for transportation. Both bills actually have passed their respective chambers. The Senate passed unanimously 49-0, and the House bill passed 96-1. So that's what's going on with those big. So again, we've been sharing a lot of information on these 3 bills with legislators, and also weighing in on policy bills and participating in work sessions when we're able to make show how innovative Walla Public Schools are being. So I think our engagement has definitely helped make a difference, and I know it's made a difference in the way that your legislators in the 16th have voted on some of those really high priority bills. So with that, I'd be happy to answer questions.
I have to say, Marie, that you are a tenacious and amazing advocate for the students in our district, and you have a great impact, and we greatly appreciate you're keeping us connected, because it's a very busy and hectic time, and your voice and advocacy is super important. So thank you for that thorough update.
Thank you.
So communication, now we have that. So we have the time where many of you have been waiting for, and I am glad that we are able to meet in person. I've got a stack here, so I'll call you up. The citizens' comments, I gotta read along here, so I will share. We welcome your comments and questions during the time set aside in our regular business meetings. Attendees have signed up in the form back there. It's the time of the meeting where we welcome you to come forward and offer public comment, ask questions, provide recommendations for educational improvement. For the board policy, we typically refrain from providing responses following public comments, and will ensure follow-up is made if requested and is necessary. We ask that you adhere to the following guidelines. State your name. Keep your comments brief and to the point. There's a 3-minute limit. That reminds me to bring out my 3-minute limiter. There it is, a timer, not 12 minutes. That was the pizza last night. 3 minutes. Do not reflect adversely on the political or economic view, ethnic background, character, or motives of any individual. Please, if you have a specific complaint about an individual employee, please address it through the superintendent's office, not in this setting. So I've got a list here. Stephanie Kaitola. I hope I did it right. So Stephanie, we've got the podium on. Check and make sure that we can all hear you. Thank you.
All right, can you hear me? Hi, my name is Stephanie Kaitola, and I'm here with 2 hats on tonight. One is a parent of one student who has graduated from Walla Public Schools, and a second who will be graduating this year. And also as a certificated employed teacher in our district. I just wanted to thank you, the board, for listening to the library materials review committee on the books that were being questioned and whether they belonged in our libraries or not. I think that they serve a purpose for many students that feel marginalized within our schools and are looking for paths for exploration that maybe they are not receiving within their own homes. As a teacher, I've seen some students looking beyond their homes for extra information and also sharing that and trying to come up with their own identity, my children included. And I just want to thank you for trusting the committee, for doing the due diligence, for trusting that they looked at all the aspects for all the students that are involved, and for trusting the professional opinion, because these are teachers that gave extra time, teachers that have multiple years of education and professional training. They went through it and they decided that they were of substance, and they're still on our shelves, and I thank you for that. They're not required curriculum, and so parents that wish their students not to have those books, they don't have to, and you recognize that also. And I just want to publicly thank you for supporting that team and supporting Judy for this process. Thank you. Thank you.
The next comment will be from Lisa Lydecker. Lyendecker?
Close enough.
No, you deserve to have it correct. Right there, yeah.
Hi, my name is Lisa Lyendecker, and the reason I am speaking before the board today is my love for my country. What is being taught or not taught in our schools today affects our community, our state, and the country. It is important for our students to be taught how to think critically, not what to think.
Mm-hmm.
They need to be educated in the history of this great country, the world, English, mathematics, humanities, and sciences. They need to be encouraged to engage in debate, not vilify those who have opposing views.
Mm-hmm.
We do not want conformity of thought, but we want innovative thinkers.
Mm-hmm.
Critical race theory and comprehensive sex education have no place in our schools. We want our students to be responsible, educated, compassionate people when they graduate, not social warriors. I have seen the infiltration of communist socialist ideas being taught in our schools nationwide. This must be stopped if this great country of ours is to continue as a constitutional republic and a shining beacon of freedom for the world.
You're here.
Thank you.
Very nice. Very nice.
Is Noah Leather.
Thank you, school board. I'm going to use my 3 minutes to share some thoughts from people that are a lot smarter than I am. And then I'll tell you who they are. Number one, banning books gives us silence when we need speech. It closes our ears when we need to listen. It makes us blind when we need sight. Stephen Chbosky. Number two, censorship is the child of fear and the father of ignorance. Laurie Halse Anderson. Number three, I hate it that Americans are taught to fear some books and some ideas as though they were diseases. Kurt Vonnegut. If you only read the books that everyone else is reading, you can only think what everyone else is thinking. Haruki Murakami. What is freedom of expression? Without the freedom to offend, it ceases to exist. Salman Rushdie. Censorship is telling a man he can't have a steak just because a baby can't chew it. Mark Twain. Yes, books are dangerous. They should be dangerous because they contain ideas. Peter Houtman. Censorship, like charity, should begin at home. But unlike charity, that's where it should end. Claire Booth Luce. Books that the world calls immoral are books that show the world its own shame. Oscar Wilde. Finally, think for yourselves. and let others enjoy that privilege to do so too. Voltaire. Thank you.
Public comment is Colleen Lambert.
I wrote something, so I'm gonna read it. So I'm Colleen Lambert. I'm a mother of 3 children in our district, and I am trying to raise my children with morals, integrity, and in a health-conscious way. I do not feel that our children should be in, I do feel that our children should be in public school. However, not at the expense of their values or health being placed at risk. We live in America where values and freedom are highly noted and praised. When I see laws being put on the docket that are intended to strip our freedom on how to protect our children's health as we see fit, and also vulgar sexual content being displayed in our public libraries, our district libraries, I question whether the school board is concerned with our children's upbringing at all. I do not believe that people with the same morals and values should have to remove their children from public schools to protect them. And that is what people are saying to do at meetings. Our schools need children that have morals, and not only to influence other people's children, but to ease up the teacher's load. We are responsible for building the integrity of the future generation. This doesn't just pertain to my kids, but to all kids. People need to be able to trust in our school system. And also know that parents' voices make a difference. And if they do not see change, we can then take it to a higher level of legislation and encourage people to remove their kids from the defective school system. I believe if we all focus on the children and their best interests, we will see change. Thank you for your time. Let's change start now.
Yeah. Great job. That's great.
Our next comment comes from Katie Donlin.
Hi. Can you hear me? Hi, my name's Katie Donlin, and I'm 61 years old, and I live in the Sharp Stream neighborhood right over here. So tonight I was in the parking lot hearing the prayers and asking for God's guidance to the school board meeting. For me, I prayed by surrendering my burdens to God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit, by asking for divine interventions and God's will. Then I accept what happens. It seems to me that God has spoken last week at the Zoom school board meeting. With the school board decision, I accept your decision. Thank you, Walla School Board members, for wisely keeping these scorebooks on the library shelves at Walla High School. Thank you for having an entire library section for the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, questioning, gender fluid, and hold on. I lost my spot. Okay, for books for all students to read, but especially for students who are discovering their sexuality. Sexuality is about sexual feelings, thoughts, attractions, behaviors towards other people. Sexuality is diverse and personal. Discovering sexuality is liberation, exciting, and a positive experience. For some, it can take time to figure it out and can be confusing. Thanks for having library sections and selections to help high school students discover their sexuality. Thanks for helping our high school students to transition into adulthood, since at age 18, students graduate from high school and enter into our community as adults. Thanks for believing in our students and helping them to have positive looks while growing up in high school. I commend and thank the Walla School Board. Thank you.
Thank you. Kim, I believe that's a P, so that would be KF. And I got that one right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kim Payette, and I'm a parent of a kindergarten and first grader at Sharpstein Elementary School. I want to address the school board and parents present tonight with a concern I have with the well-being of our children in the Walla Public School District. My concern lays with the plastic shields used in our kids' cafeteria. I've already contacted the principal of our of Sharpstein on this issue, but I haven't had a specific answer on whether they'll be removed or not. It is my understanding that the Washington Department of Health gave recommendations to school in the wake of this pandemic as of what they could do to prevent the spread of the virus. Therefore, they came to use those in our schools. I've done a great deal of research on the issue, and I would like to share some of my findings with you. I've read a multitude of articles stating studies and so on about the ineffectiveness of these barriers. Here are some points worth taking into consideration. Intuition tells us that a plastic shield would be protective against germs, but scientific who study aerosol, airflow, and ventilation say that much of the time the barriers don't help and probably give people a false sense of security. And sometimes the barriers can make things worse. They can also impede normal airflow and ventilation, and under normal conditions in store, classrooms, and offices, exhaled particles dispersed, carried by air current, and depending on the ventilation system, are replaced by fresh air roughly every 15 to 30 minutes. But erecting plastic barriers can change airflow in a room, disrupt normal ventilation, and create dead zones, where viral aerosol particles can build up and become highly concentrated. A study published in June and led by researchers from Johns Hopkins showed that desk screens in classrooms were associated with increased risk of coronavirus infections. In Massachusetts School District, researchers found that plexiglass dividers with sidewalls in the main office were impeding airflow. A study looking at schools in Georgia found that desk barriers had little effect on the spread of the coronavirus compared with ventilation improvements. Before the pandemic, a study published in 2014 found that office cubicle dividers were among the factors that may have contributed to disease transmission during a tuberculosis outbreak in Australia. To conclude, aerosol experts agree that desk shields are unlikely to help or are likely to interfere with normal ventilation of a room, and depending on the conditions, the plastic shields could cause viral particles to accumulate in the room. This is why I ask you to please consider this serious matter tonight. It is time we remove the plexiglass from our school cafeteria, as this safety measure has been proven ineffective. Let's make proper changes to ensure our children are eating in safe and clean environments. Thank you for your time.
Woo! Yes.
Oh, there we go. Zaya Carver.
Yes.
I'm Dr. Zeta Carver, and I want to read just a little bit from this book, which I know that many of you have read. And I'm reading in chapter 6, just a couple of sentences. I'm starting on page 120. And I'm reading about the obstacles to dignity. We've talked about the need for dignity and what it may look like in practice, but sometimes we can get a better grasp on an abstract topic if we look at its opposite. So let's move to that now. This is called othering. Show of hands, how many of you know what othering is? I'm going to get right to the definition here. I won't waste your time. Otherized. It means viewed, treated, and made to seem different in a way that ostracizes, denigrates, reduces, and dehumanizes, labels, objectifies, and animalizes. Point 2, mistreated. dealt with in a way that is unfair, unjust, biased due to perceptions about your identity, group membership, conditions, circumstances, or cultural practical norms. Point 3, marginalized, rejected, and pushed to the edge of a group. Put or kept in a position of limited significance, influence, and power, only able to gain access and belonging by changing or hiding important aspects of oneself. And the last point, 4, is dismissed. Having your lived experience or expertise questioned, invalidated, or deemed insufficient. Now let me give you a couple of examples. One day in the winter, it was around 20 degrees outside. The construction was going on and students had to eat outside. There was a teacher at Walla who would only let vaccinated students in her classroom to eat. Now what right does a teacher have to ask that question? Why treat one group of students different from the others? There's a student who has terrible asthma and she was not allowed a mask break. Many of us have exemptions for masks, but yet we're scared to ask for those exemptions because we're going to be othered. Another example, a member in this room felt that unvaccinated staff should be jailed or fined. That's yet another example. Or the same teacher who only allowed vaccinated into her classroom made students cry because she told them that if you're not vaccinated, you have no feelings. Now, what right do we have to put students in different groups, depending on whether they're vaccinated or unvaccinated? So I brought this book, and I was going to hand it back to you with the hopes that you go back to chapter 6, page 124. Actually, I started on page 122 to 125. Please read that. Please do not other our students who are not vaccinated. It's not right. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Drumheller, and I'm going to be really brief today. I worked for the school district for 30 years. I enjoyed so much my time. I was a cook. I probably cooked in every school in the district. My favorite time was with the high school kids. I got to cook for trips with the cross-country team up at the, wherever we did, I can't remember that. But, and the FFA teams, I got to be the mother for those and take the kids all over the state. I enjoyed my time. I enjoyed working with the staff. We were united. It was an awesome time. But then, the closer I got to retirement age, things changed, and I just didn't feel comfortable anymore, so I retired. Now, I'm going to say I'm at fault for not paying attention to what's been going on in the schools, because when I retired, I was done. I get up at 4 o'clock still in the morning. I get my horse ready at 5 o'clock, and I'm out Bennington Lake riding. That's what I do, and then I work. I take care of elderly people. But I can tell you, from now on, I'm going to be coming to the school board. I'm going to pay attention. I won't always talk, but I'm going to take notes. I'm going to do it for our children. I have grandchildren. I'm going to have great-grandchildren soon. And I want them to get a good academic education, not a sex education.
Yeah. Woo! Good job, Cheryl.
Next up is Kathy Ramsey.
I would like to talk about the special session school board meeting last week. But first, I would like to read something from one of the 4 books that the school committee approved to leave on the shelf in the schools. The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. A bolt of desire ran down his genitals and softening the lip of his anus. He wanted to F her tenderly, but the tenderness would not hold. The tightness of her vagina was more than he could bear. His soul seemed to slip down his guts and fly out into her, and the gigantic thrust he made into her then provoked the only sound she made. Removing himself from her was so painful to him, he cut it short and snatched his genitals out of the dry harbor of her vagina. She appeared to have fainted. This was a dad raping his 11-year-old daughter. This is one of the books the school committee left on the school library shelf. Wow. The dad goes on.
Okay, let her talk.
The little girls are the only things I'll miss. Do you know that when I touched her sturdy little tits and bit them just a little, I felt I was being friendly? If I'd been hurting them, would they have come back? They'd eat ice cream with their legs open while I played with them. It was like a party. This selected book review committee that had 2 or 3 students, and the rest were all school district employees. There was no parents, no non-biased people. They were all highly educated people that said that this book got 4 out of 5 stars on Amazon. This book did not fit their definition of pornography, which was their definition of excite sexually. Also, this book needs to be read for the advanced placement exam. Oh, but wait, you can't appeal these books for 3 years now. And when asked if each person on this committee had to read this book and the other 3 books, we were told that it wasn't on the criteria that was in Procedure 2021. Did they read the books? We don't know, because there was no written evidence from any one of them about anything. And to top it all off, one of the school board members asked everyone that was listening to the special session meeting to go up to the small portion of the community who are doing these attacks to please reconsider that we are harming the children and we've gone too far. Well, you, the school board, are the small portion of this community. You, the school board and superintendent, are harming the children and have gone too far.
Hi, I'm here to talk tonight about accountability and transparency. I believe the root issues that we are currently facing all stem from this particular problem. Please listen as I quote from the Walla School District website. Because you guys are a Title I school, these are your responsibilities. Family engagement is a shared responsibility in which schools and other community agencies and organizations are committed to reaching out to engage families in meaningful ways, and in which families are committed to actively supporting their children's learning and development. Walla School District is committed to engaging and partnering with families and the community to build relationships that support and improve learning, development, and health of our children at home, in school, and in the community. Schools and districts are expected to provide two-way communication with families that is relevant, clear, and regular. Please note the responsibilities in Title I schools. It feels like that is not happening here in Walla School District. From my perspective, parents are not being partnered with. It appears to me that the board is not listening to parents. It doesn't feel like the board is welcoming two-way communication with families that is relevant, clear, and regular. Personally, I would like to see more parent involvement in committees, for example, the Library Review Committee, curriculum and procedure transparency and communication between teachers and families that is relevant, clear, and regular. It is important to make sure COVID policy in schools are fully necessary, such as plastic partitions, spacing, and no talking during lunches. Curbing all bullying in classrooms by fellow students or even teachers regarding personal medical decisions or political views. School-issued technology that allows students to access pornography and inappropriate content has to come to a stop, or students shouldn't have Chromebooks. period. Zoom meetings discriminate against parents who do not have access to good internet and is a horrible solution to public comment as it is glitchy and you cannot even see the person speaking. In-person meetings are a must. All of these recommendations listed above are issues within our school district and confirmed by multiple sources. And let me clarify something. I refuse to be turned into a villain or someone that has gone too far. I am simply a mom who cares more about her children than her reputation or her personal information. Also, I would like everyone to be aware that an order was signed by Judge Wolfram on Monday, February 14th, stating that Zoom-only meetings are no longer allowed for school board meetings, and all action taken at the recent Zoom-only board meetings are ruled null and void. I appreciate your time.
Yeah.
This is all the public comments that we have. Our student representative gave us a written report. She is enjoying the Walla basketball game. That's been a lot of fun too. And that was all, her report was sent to all of the board members. Okay. But I don't get to ask her how the sheep are doing. That's, my standard question. So we move to the board of directors report. I guess I'll just start at the end there.
Well, normally I would be bringing people up to date on Ed 5, but since we have something. Yes.
Oh, you leave it all, you leave it all the recording? Okay, I want to say that the continuing education that we had at the PLC conference was absolutely outstanding and tremendous. I also want to note, as is normal this time of year, the personnel committee report contains numerous names of people who have devoted decades to making the world a better place in Walla public schools, and I want to acknowledge and thank all of those. I think it's been since the last meeting that we've got those through Pioneer when they opened their gym, and that was really positive and exciting. And finally, there's one other thing that I really need to do now that we're in person. It is tradition to award the past president with a plaque and gavel and to share some of the names. This year's president
That's funny.
has an accessory in the form of a COVID plaque or whatever. So let's see. Yeah, just some of the things that President Sarley highlights of his 2021. The school district developed and announced a student-led live streaming network called Blue Devil Northwest, which I probably would have been watching instead of timing people. I have watched many games on that. The Walla Public Schools K-5 students safely returned to a hybrid in-person learning in January 2021. Middle school students followed in February, high school in August. And the K-8 students safely returned full-time in April. We returned full-time in person in the fall of 2021. We developed a comprehensive free summer soul program. We served 1,800 students. It was all hands on deck, do everything we can for the students. We completed several bond projects. The renovated Blue Devil building, which is the science building. We've got new music building, new fitness center, renovated library, the gym parking lot. Those of us that have parked in there truly are grateful for that renovation. And there is a connecting upper parking lot west of Yellow Hawk Creek. The Pioneer Middle School has a renovated gym. Unfortunately, we didn't get to have a sock hop in the old Cruiser gym. We have two bathrooms there, a new auxiliary gym and fitness center, a new entry addition, new cafeteria, and renovated 1950s wing and classroom addition. The Moody Investor Services affirmed the district's continued strong credit rating, which is important for all of us taxpayers, very important. We have two high Advisory Committee. We earned the Washington State Directors Order of Distinction for the 4th year running. The district teamed with the Department of Health for on-site voluntary vaccinations for students, and our I-Ready Fall Data exceeded national. Director Sarley, thank you for leading the district. Let me check my agenda and get us on track again. Dr. Wade Smith is next with the superintendent.
Well, you've already provided the bond report, so I'm going to skip over that, but it is exciting to see that. And we will be opening up the high school commons cafeteria for food service in about 2 to 3 weeks. That's going to be an exciting opportunity there to open up that kitchen live. Moving on to the monthly enrollment report, again, in lieu of time, we're already a little bit over. I'll just be brief on that. You can see that we're continuing to hover around that 5488 mark. We're up about 13 students from last month. You can kind of see historically, we do tip up just a little bit. We had a handful of kindergarten students, about 7 come in from last month to this month. It was nice to see that number creep up a little bit because we know we are down, although we're still down about 90 students from the budgeted number that we budgeted prior. So again, obviously carefully monitoring that trend as we continue out the rest of the school year. Moving on to the electric bus grant. I know Director Rendall and the President Ladder that we talked about maybe provided a brief update to the board about this exciting opportunity. Department of Ecology set aside about $10 million for opportunities for districts to apply for electric bus grant. It allows an opportunity to replace aged and outdated diesel buses with up to, in our case, 3 electric buses. The grant is a kind of a 2-phase grant which provides the difference in cost between an electric vehicle bus and a regular diesel bus. Understanding electric diesel bus is about $125,000. Electric bus is about $325,000. Obviously, there's a big spread between those two that helps cover that gap. In addition to providing about $75,000 for infrastructure costs, because you buy the bus is one thing that Director Rendall knows who owns an electric vehicle. You have to have the charging apparatus, bring the power into the site, and all those facility infrastructure improvements to support what likely will be a large fleet of electric buses down the road. We feel we're poised pretty well for this grant, to receive this grant because of our freedom of lunch, some of our community health indicators with respect to air pollution, as well as some old fleet buses we can retire off of our fleet. Working closely with Director Taylor on this application process. The one thing the board will need to be aware, and we'll talk about this at upcoming meetings. Remember, we have a transportation vehicle fund, right? A specific fund by which we purchase and procure buses from, and that because it's in that fund, it allows for depreciation and all the other mechanics of the state STAR system and reimbursement system. The one thing we're going to have to do is this is a reimbursement grant. So we literally have to buy the buses, then apply for the reimbursement if we're awarded, of course, the grant, and then get those receipts back. This is something that we'll have to be thoughtful about because we're really going to have to front load up to $1 million if we apply for all 3 buses in this transportation vehicle fund to purchase the buses and then get reimbursed back at a later date from the state. So this is something that I know Director Taylor and I will be working with as we develop the budget process. Obviously, we have every opportunity to apply for the grant and turn it down if we don't want it, or apply for the grant, wait till we get the grant to then purchase the buses. And of course, if we apply for the grant and don't get the grant, of course we don't purchase the buses because of the ability to reimburse ourselves back for that cost. But it's something we have to be thoughtful about because that will require us to transfer from our general fund into that transportation vehicle fund to be able to procure those 3 buses and the infrastructure and then reimburse ourselves back for this. So more to come. Just wanted to give you a heads up. Director Rendall, anything to add to that?
No, I'm just curious if you knew what the timing was of the selection of.
They did announce I know that the grants are due. I know that it's the March 25th date.
The grants are due March 25th. Because it's been really slow.
April 22nd, I think, is they talked about notification.
And then you've got a longer period of time to be able to extend. The anticipation is that it would not come out of this year's cycle, but it would come out of FY 22-23.
I would guess it would be quite some time before the electric buses.
Yes, exactly. We're waiting almost a year to get our regular diesel buses. So you think about this is going to have some longer term budget implications and kind of keeping the money in that account, getting reimbursed. And so we just want to talk about that risk reward factor. Again, I'm excited about this opportunity. We know this is where we are all going, and this is a great step in the right direction in partnering with our local cooperative. They're actually going to be providing quite a bit of resources to bring that power into our transportation co-op, because obviously these electric stations require a substantial amount of power and infrastructure to support them. But excited about the opportunity. Director Taylor and Director Griffith and I are working on this for happy to answer any questions you have about it.
So have you heard back from Marie, in terms of what the start of the transportation fund and what their, I mean, long term, I assume this grant isn't going to keep happening, so they're going to have to start funding buses at a different level.
Yeah, so we're working on, there's a couple of bills right now that we're working on right now that are allowing some infrastructure and studies to be actually reimbursable back with depreciation for buses. The state has got some catch up to do when it comes to depreciation. It's built off of the big yellow diesel buses and the depreciation and the life cycle of diesel buses. Electric vehicles, they've got some catching up to do to get down to the life cycle of a battery on a bus, which is more about 8 to 10 years, not 12 to 15 year cycle. And so there's some things we're going to have to do to help catch the state up so we can then depreciate these buses long term. And as we buy electric buses and then they age out, we use that depreciation to then buy and procure future electric buses. Any other questions about that? I will keep you apprised. I know Director Rebell's on this. We work closely with the electrical engineer who now has the site map and the estimates built for us, so we will be able to get all the infrastructure in that $75,000 allocation.
And it may be possible to finance the buses, the battery separately from the bus. There's been some programs that allow you to lease the battery and pay for it as you use it.
Yeah, that's a good point. And there's a current RCW until 2025 that's all sales tax free for the infrastructure of the buses for electric buses that is contained in their supply. So more to come. Just want to give you the heads up in there and thank you for that the opportunity to provide that update. Just a couple other quick updates. I know we're already running a little bit long here. Just first off, as it was announced this morning, great article in the paper. Probably tomorrow's paper. I don't know if they're in the top or not, but obviously the announcement of our 2 finalists for the Walla principal replacement as outgoing principal Ron Higgins retires after about just shy of 40 years service to our school district. Excited about that opportunity. Want to make sure we invite our entire community to that public meet and greet session between 4 and 5 o'clock in our newly renovated commons. So maybe your first chance for some of you to see the newly renovated commons there and hear from both finalists and offer input to the selection committee. And as president, I know you're going to be serving on the interview committee. Have many members, many staff members, many students involved in the interview committee, as well as staff involved in the walkthrough committee, where those 2 candidates have an opportunity to engage with students and engage in classrooms and seek some feedback there. The last is just a quick update on another press release that was sent out this week. Again, just delighted due to, again, things like our underlying credit rating, as well as our continued growth in our community. Our bond rates and our tax rates are going down fairly substantially within our jurisdiction. So it's great to see that the average homeowner in Walla will save about $100 per year as a result of that, just north of 40 cents per 1,000 tax decrease. Bond measurement, we promised it's going to be $2.23 per shot, or $1.23 per thousand less, now to $1.03 per thousand. So we're 20 cents below what we promised our taxpayers and delivering on every one of those projects. So again, excited about that opportunity. And as those tax statements come this spring, we hope you'll see that marked decrease in your rates on your taxes. With that, that concludes my superintendent's report. If there's any questions from the board.
You said the date of the meet and greet.
It's on upcoming Tuesday, next Tuesday the 22nd. So 1 week from tonight. 4 o'clock.
24th, so I'm down there.
22nd, right? It's 22nd, right? Yeah. Be there. Exciting opportunity to hear from 2 incredible finalists.
Looking over, we have the ed fine update.
Just like these, have you guys met Andrew yet or not? No, Eric's working quite a bit. Some of you have in some committee meetings, but welcome.
Hi, Madam President, Board, Superintendent. My name is Nandan Nair. I'm the data engineer for the district. And I've been working, I've been with the district for about 4 months now. And I've been working on a platform called Ed5. I'm sure you've heard quite a bit about Ed5 in the recent months. And Ed5 Alliance is a nonprofit foundation set up by the Michael and Susan Bell Foundation, and it is a bunch of technologists, and educators, and administrators coming together, to form a comprehensive outlook on ed tech data. So for decades now, educators and administrators have entered data into disparate systems and software, into different databases. So you would use a certain system for rostering kids, there's one for curriculum, there's one for assessments, and so forth. And typically, those systems don't talk to each other. So that makes a comprehensive view of combined data that gives us the true picture of what is going on in the classroom and around the classroom from a high level perspective. Very difficult because these systems don't talk to each other, and the data within these so-called information silos, they make sense only within their individual context. You don't combine different silos until now. And the EdFi Alliance was put in place to kind of solve this problem by introducing a technology suite that contains a data standard as one of the primary deliverables. And the data standard is something that is public and open source. It is free in both senses of the word. Free as in free of cost. It is provided to educational institutions free. And it comes free as in free of restrictions in terms of customizability. So the EdFi Foundation has rolled out a suite of technology tools that kind of work well with each other, that can be used to get these systems to talk to each other. And over the last 3 months or so, I've been working to get the majority of our student information in Skyward, which is our student information system, into the EdFi platform. And it hasn't been without challenges. We have a complicated relationship in terms of getting support from the upstream vendor, which is Skyward, because we are set up to go to our ESD first, and then to WSIPSI, which is a co-op out of Olympia that serves Skyward throughout the state. And once you pass these entities, intermediaries, you actually get to the upstream vendor who can provide you with meaningful support around EdFi, which is fairly new from a Skyward perspective. And we have about 90% of what the student data in Skyward loaded onto EdFi, and we hope to close that gap to where we have all of that data loaded into EdFi in about a month to a month and a half. And once we have that, then we can proceed to visualize that data to where we can make charts and pictures out of it to where it is easier to digest and derive patterns from. And we also have formed a data system committee under Superintendent Smith's leadership, and we are addressing things such as data quality and streamlining operations around data as a whole. Because what data is garbage in, garbage out. So we got to keep our data clean so that we can derive actionable patterns out of that data, and we got to keep things consistent. So it is we have introduced topics such as data governance with this data system committee, and it is set of policies and procedures to keep data clean. Just because you can do it doesn't mean it should be clean. There are some responsibilities that some people are entrusted with data ownership, some others are custodians, that sort of thing. So The other thing is, we are trying to establish data ownership for all pieces of data within the system. The superintendent owns all of the data in the system, but then we are trying to assign ownership to the directors, whoever might be responsible for managing that data on a daily basis. And then we also have a priority to identify the most important pieces of data and make sure that it is managed proactively. And data errors are to be caught as early as we can in the chain before they sit on that same place forever. And people make copies of it. So we want to be able to catch those errors as close to the origin as possible, if that makes sense. That's all I have from an impact perspective, unless you have questions.
You want to share some of your thoughts?
So, the history with the district of Ed 5 started when I was looking for ways to solve that siloed problem. Because I have a spouse that works in the district and has challenges with special ed, tends to touch a lot of different systems. And she spent lots of time doing it. And so the Ed 5 Foundation was something I found before I ever started on the board. Brought that effort with me. The idea that we'll be able to get a much better 360-degree view of the students from combining all of this data. Recently, I had several conversations with Dr. McIntosh at the University of Oregon, who's the chair of the Phil Knight Special Education position there, professor there at the university. He's also head of PPIS, co-chair, and he's agreed to build a Ed5 API. One of the things that Tammy did not talk about is there's many ways to bring data into this system. The best way is an API because it does all the management of pieces back and forth to users, application programming interface that allows you to pre-map everything and it just flows back and forth and takes very little management versus, you've got a spreadsheet here that's called a flat file or CSV or whatever you want to call it. You can also bring data in that way, but it's much more of a manual mode. And so the more pieces that we can get APIs to, the faster and more interactive all of this becomes. Washington State is a bit behind the curve on data integration. Many states are way ahead of us, which is unfortunate. Many states are out doing many new things with educational data. Washington has been kind of stagnant, surprisingly, even though we're a tech center in the world. I think it's the structure of way a lot of the Skyward districts have their data sort of siloed at one spot. It tends to make it out of sight, out of mind. And so fortunately, we've got a good relationship going with the Dell Foundation. We received some money from them, which is a nice thing. I don't think I have anything else. I mean, do you have questions for Andy?
I have a couple questions. So following the WSITSI discussions over the past couple of months, are we at the point now where maybe it's sometimes like pulling teeth, but you're getting everything you need to be able to pull off this work?
Correct. Well, I have some hurdles that we have in the past few months, but no showstoppers.
Okay.
We're pulling through. Yeah.
Okay, so now that the summit stage, at what point do you expect that there'll be something cool parachuting into the directors or teachers or?
That is a longer term project, but we actually have one of the starter kit dashboards that are part of the Ed5 rollout. They're kind of semi-operational, but once we get our sys data loaded, we will be in a place where we can talk about hey, can we roll out more starter kit dashboards? Can we start talking about custom reports? You know, can we go talk to educators and find out what they need? What is it that it's gonna, what's gonna help you? What report do you wanna see that it takes you half an hour to gather from all of these different systems that we can combine into one full dashboard that would just be available to them. So I think we're talking a time frame of 3 to 6 months before we can get there to where we can get customers.
So an example of that, assistant principal at Walla likes to have a list of students that have attended first period, but all of a sudden didn't show up in second period. Where'd they go? And right now it takes 30 minutes for him to get that data out of Skyward. That would be instantaneous in the ODS once it's there. The ODS is a transactional database, and it's designed to be very fast to edit and add information to. And the Skyward database is the same way. It's not designed to pull out of. So the Ed5 ODS has an analytics middle tier that sits on top of that takes that database and converts it into a dimensionalized database that adds facts and measures, pre-slices and dices it so it makes reports snappy, like you'd expect them to be. And then on top of that, we can execute Power BI. The starter kits mostly are in Power BI, I think. We've got one up that I played with quite a bit. There are others you can deploy on Google BigQuery or Tableau for that matter, anything you really want it to. But the power of it is that you take that transactional data and then you redefine it into reportable pieces that make those reports rather than PDFs become interactive. You can drag and move things and just make the reports come out. And that's the power.
Maybe have and then how are we building security for compliant role-based access?
Yeah, the reports support role-based access, so our classroom teacher should be able to see their own classroom, or the superintendent would be able to see the entire district. So it is already built in to some of the dashboards that we're doing.
So the Dell Foundation and the Alliance built that in from the get-go. They spent tens of millions of dollars building out this system, and the Alliance is a partnership of educators, technologists, and vendors all coming together to solve the common problem. And so all of those things around school districts are built into. There's 36 states now that are using it in place of like what we have for seniors. Their data, because all their schools are standardized, it just pulls up into the state automatically. It's really a fabulous system. Like I say, Washington's living now.
That's a big investment. Any other comments or anything? Big investment? Yeah. So we'll look for big rewards.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Next up is Mr. Brent Penner sharing with us a little bit about what the plans are for the summer. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, President Lauderud, school board members, Superintendent Smith. Summer, it's a year-round thing now, right? No, I'm excited to come back to you for the Summer 22 proposal and really briefly review this one-page proposal you have in front of you and ask for your blessing, your official approval or whatever, so we can hit the ground running to maximize our academic and social emotional outcomes this summer. And so this whole proposal is based on our last conversation pre-winter break around summer soul and outcomes, and then the considerations there and upon reflection. So if you look at the program, 5 weeks, 23 days, 4 hours a day, probably less students coming this year. That's just a best guess estimate based on the framework of services we're offering. Project-based learning, experiential with embedded SEL is the framework that we're approaching with.
And then this is a solely grant-funded program that we access additional stimulus-based dollars from some grants over the summer. And so this whole program will be funded through that. Some unique services this year will be the lunch we want to provide on-site in person with our kids. Great opportunity, if possible, based on guidance, to continue to connect and build community with our students. Also breaks up the learning day where kids can get that physical respite and then get back into some academic and social emotional learning. We're not going to have a mid-morning route because this whole 4-hour period is open to everyone. We don't have a morning acceleration program, so we'll run a morning route, bus route, and then the noon-based bus route, which is an easier lift for our transportation department for sure. And then our special ed model this year will target an extended school year model for those students in need, a particular need, and then really just an inclusionary belonging practice in the experiential learning throughout the rest of our buildings where targeted support will be provided where needed. If you look at the time frame, last year we went the day after school got out. This year, in terms of the project-based learning format and the framework therein, and not knowing exactly when school may end, if we have another snow day or not, but allow for ample planning time. We're going to start June 27th and run till July 29th with July 4th and July 5th off, which follows kind of a 12-month negotiated contract calendar there. And then open to all students Monday through Friday. It fulfills the morning hours. At the elementary level, we would like to consolidate to Edison, Green Park, and Sharpstein. Facilities-based considerations there, where a lot of the feedback from the summer was that some of our facilities need work. You know, they need to be cleaned during summer. Classrooms need to be prepped for learning for the school year. There's a lot of technology and infrastructure that takes place over the summer as well. And then Garrison will be our consolidated middle school program to help us strive to get Pioneer fully online and through the bond project or where we are. And then the high school, we're super excited to be back on Walla this summer. The community college was gracious to give us space up there last year. And then, but this year we can leverage several different of our new amazing buildings at the high school. And so if you look at the breakdown between the elementary sites, we're anticipating about 200 kids per site. Edison and Sharpstein will be the consolidation sites that would take in Bernie and Prospect Point kids most likely. We've consulted with John Griffith Transportation, and that makes the most sense in terms of where our students live and how kids would access buildings. The educational lift will be supported through our 21st Century After School programs. Classified staff who are really interested and have a desire for summer working, and then also supported by certificated teachers who are working on their administrative credentials. Many of them have already reached out and said, I would love administrative responsibilities over the summer, so they can kind of cut their teeth and hit the ground running with some of that schoolwork or whatever. Middle school, a very similar framework. The difference there is we'll concurrently offer 2 to 3 project-based learning opportunities each week to give those kids interest-based choices, which has shown to be as kids get older, they want more interest-based choices, they vote with their feet. And then also some considerations about promising data around our LTEL students, and knowing that one of the bright spots of last summer was engagement of our LTEL learners and the academic gains they had, and so we want to continue just to stay connected with them, engage them, and foster that learning element within our project-based learning dynamic.
We also have long-term English language learners, so just want to make sure. We don't acronym.
Yeah, thank you. And then Lincoln Opportunity and Wahai, traditional credit retrieval classes, as well as additional credit classes, and then also obviously opportunities for some of these discovery trips and experiences that were highlighted last summer. Questions around this proposal?
This is a question that Victor Renault asked after the fact last year, and I thought it was brilliant at the time. I really did. How are we defining the success of this program, and how will we know if we care?
Yeah, so, good questions. Hopefully over time, the EdFi system and the data therein will help us define some of those things. A lot of outcomes also will be longitudinal based outcomes, right? They will manifest 2 to 3, 4 years down the road, potentially with some of our middle school students as they transition into high school. But in the short term, I think participation, if we look at grant-based funding, keeping kids connected. As we know from the lessons of the pandemic, the kids do much better when they're with us educationally, right? There's a lot of social, emotional outcomes, there's a lot of basic need outcomes that kids need support and time out of school. So participation will be a factor. Are we serving the students of Walla and meeting the need there? And we will always track their academic outcomes based on entry into Skyward, which we implemented last year with Pam Jacobson. And so we will continue to do a spring assessment, fall assessment, and align that with the practices of each grade level band. So this is what the elementary program looked like, this is the projects they went through. And so align academic outcomes with what actually happened and dig into research and data there. And then finally, we do have student, parent, and staff feedback. So anecdotal collection of evidence as well as feedback-based data.
I'm super torn on this because last year we had a model for summer school, and I was convinced it really wasn't going to accomplish what it needed to accomplish in terms of academic acceleration. And when we measured it, it really did. It did some nice things, and there were some other things that came out, but it really didn't accomplish it. I see the same. Everybody likes project-based learning. Everybody likes SEL. They sound really good. They're warm and fuzzy. I see the same things happening here, where it doesn't seem to me that it's a solution to the problem we actually face, which is the big red bars in so many of our grades in terms of ELA and math achievement, because kids miss so much school. So I see that happening again. I have a really hard time feeling like I can support this. Where I'm torn is I understand my role. I'm not the academic expert of this room. I'm not a curriculum designer. I don't know how to build an academic program for students, and I really want to defer to staff as much as possible. But I'm seeing us going down the same road we went down last year, making the same mistakes we made last year. And it'll be nice. It'll be a nice program. It'll be a nice summer daycare. But is it really the most impactful strategy we can take on to fix what we kind of broke in the last 2 years?
Yeah, I sort of second what Director Sarley says, or it's just kind of restated there. We did not see, with the exception of special education, which my spouse was one of the teachers, they saw increases, so kudos there, but if we aren't going to, we have a limited budget, how are we going to resource things that actually make a difference? And I think sort of what Director Sarley was stating there in my original question was, if we can't measure it, how can we manage it? And so I would like to see some very concrete things, some metrics, some benchmarks, something that we can measure this program against that are tangible, that aren't, they feel like they might be doing the right thing, but are they? And if you can't answer that, it's hard to devote funds to something that isn't, that we just can't ever know the outcome. That's my concern.
I noticed on the high school there's some credit retrieval, so that's certainly something that can be tracked. And something that's really important because those are the kids that are students exit. And you know, thinking back to the PLC concept of gearing down and the collaboration to say what are a few essential things that is important maybe to help the kids threshold, you know, because we aren't gonna catch them all up or anything like that, but are there a few? And that would be the efforts of the collaborative and the learning team to say, yeah, can we include a few of those things? But some of those soft skills are just simply hard to measure, and involvement, there is a correlation there. And sometimes you, and I know we could compare the kids that went and didn't win, and that's the really hard part that you're looking at.
I wasn't convinced that we captured students that were in most need. Always that was the challenge.
So what direction would you like to provide Brent? You know, do you want him to refine this? I know he and I had some conversations after last meeting. I know we were deeply concerned about having our classroom teachers out. We said we gotta take a summer off, and so we kind of charged Brent to develop something without using classroom teachers. And I think that's where he kind of went more to the social, emotional, project-based, getting college kids and 21st century staff. Would you like him to rework this and come back next month? You know, what do you need from him to make sure? Because I know sooner or later he's going to want to start getting out advertisements and structures and facility uses and all those sort of things on the couch. What would you like Brent to provide?
What's the budget for this?
The budget is $500,000 to $600,000, solely funded on a OSPI ESSER 3 after school and summer learning supplemental grant. So the next 2 years, the whole summer program will be funded by a grant that we wrote this summer specifically for after school and summer learning.
So this money is available, this bucket of money is...
This money is available and specific to this program, and that's the only dollars we're spending.
Which is leads to my answer, which is from the beginning, I wanted to see us shift more money towards extended day after school. I mean, if there's a different summer model, it seems like it's really gonna work and we think kids can show up and we think non-certificated staff can teach it, great, I'd like to see it. I don't think I see it up there. If it doesn't exist, that's okay, but let's let the why be the why. Let's let Parks and Rec be Parks and Rec, and let's focus on educating kids. And that we've for years said, wouldn't it be great if the day was a little bit longer? We can engage those kids after school. That's where I would keep some of this, push more of the money, and wind down some of this stuff.
Well, I'd like to argue that if you're saying the why is the way, let them do that, there are plenty of people who cannot afford the why. And as a parent, I struggle finding summer activities for my son that were affordable to me. And so I think this provides a way for some families to have a summer activity for their students that doesn't cost anything to them. And I just don't see a harm. I get also like where are we improving our students and their learning, but also I don't see that this is harming them in any way. And so I'm kind of, you know, on the fence too.
Are there dollars for the program, the Y program, the pool program in the...
No, we're not subsidizing or fostering any of that. It's a strictly on-site, Walla Public Schools based program.
One additional artifact that Brent does has provided you, I think exactly what Director Sorry is talking about, is he's provided that kind of after school option, because this grant, again, this is separate from your ESSER dollars. Brent wrote this grant, it's about 1.2 million, I think, total, right, over 2 years?
Yeah, it's 1.6 million over 2 years.
Over 6 over 2 years. So the idea is that it can be used for summer or after school. It can't be used during the day because it's strictly an after school, summer school program. So you want Brent to go briefly over the after school? You did a pretty good audit here. I'm not sure you had a chance to see this.
And I'd like to respond to the question about parents' point too. I think you're right. There's nothing here that's bad. This is nice to have stuff. We're headed into a conversation later in this meeting, but then also we're going to hear about budget and about our pretty constrained resource situation that we're facing. And so we don't have a whole lot of extra money to throw at the big gaping hole of academic achievement that we have with a lot of kids right now. So we have to be really, really careful and thoughtful about every dollar we spend on stuff. Last year we didn't have quite as much time to plan. It was easy to lose money, I get it. It is different this year. if $400,000 should go into this, and another 200,000 should go to something else, and we think that's gonna move the needle more, let's do that. Let's spend this money really, really carefully.
I agree, I'd like to see what, the options are for after school.
Yeah, so I put together currently what we're doing at each grade level band. Hopefully you have this one page here. Let's see, there's one on there also, we can pull up on the screen here, but more or less at the elementary level, middle school level, and then at Lincoln and Walla. And I put in here not just our 21st century funded after school programs, but other basically services that occur on our sites that are intimately tied to Walla Public Schools, whether that's athletics or academic programs through other grants, Campfire because they're occur on our sites and serve that program, serve those kids through their programming. And so basically, you can see the programs. We have the audit of kids currently projected for the end of this year. So the end of school or the current projections there. And then at the bottom, the participation is basically of the cross-section of the total number of students. That's where we anticipate the number of students who will be participating a little bit or more. And then in addition, each of these students is unique. These are unique students. And so some students do play sports and also attend after school, but we made sure that there wasn't overlap. And so when you see these numbers, it's a true representation of unique students to unique.
The left of what we're currently doing now, is Brent's done a really good job. About 941 of our 2,200 elementary kids are attending some sort of after school activity. Thank you. So we've got an audience to capture there, right? Of kids who aren't attending after school. And on the right-hand column, ideas, thoughts, suggestions that we're coming up with based off of, again, part of that maybe investment that Director started talking about, maybe after school tutoring, maybe there's going to be some RA challenges, some experiential or SEL stuff. Those are opportunities to maybe capture or even address differently some of those current students that are already attending after school programs. The investment that we talked about, maybe both on the middle and the high school as well.
I have a little bit of a hard time digesting it in this form. What's really useful to me is sort of a white paper that outline why you think these programs are the right ones. That explains.
Yeah, so
it's just there's a lot of information here.
In brief, I can tell you the recommendations I gave and the justification behind that. Cooking classes, doing after-school education for 17 years. Every single kid wants to cook after school, and they also want to eat. And so, cooking classes are always the first thing kids want to do, any level, elementary, middle, and high school. Cooking classes are very expensive for us to run. With 21st century dollars, we actually can't buy food. It's not federally allowed. And so they're difficult classes for us to run. And so we know cooking classes would be extremely well attended by students if they were offered in after-school setting. So that was a great one. I'll touch academics in a second. First robotics is things we've done in the past that haven't done in many years. The First Robotics is a robotics competition by First Organization. It's an international competition. Hundreds of thousands of kids participate annually. Some of our best and brightest kids have worked alongside some of the kids that we would deem at risk, and the peer relationships in those programs are super powerful and experiences that they're in. And so we're looking at cross sections of kids. When I look at these 941 students, I know who these kids are based on our data. And so I'm looking for activities will attract kids who are not in the 941. So can we push after school or summer participation up into the 1500s by filling in activities that kids might be interested in? Rock climbing, each of our elementaries has a rock wall. The elementary kids want to use it all the time. It's underutilized. The PE teachers tell me that we don't use it very much after school. Ballet, folklorico, culturally, we've done this heavily a decade ago, and at the elementary and middle school level, we have 60 or 70 kids at each school who are participating in ballet, folklorico, and that hasn't existed again. So we're not reinventing the wheel, we're just re-engaging opportunities to get more kids to participate. When we look at academics,
at the elementary level. The academic tutoring program, the 4 to 6 week session, 3 to 4 days a week. Very defined period of instructional attainment for kids, very target-based focus, like Center Soul. When Kim Decker was at Blue Ridge, they utilized this program for a couple of years. It aligned with some of the extremely positive state-based testing outcomes there as well. In addition, Maria Garcia, pre-pandemic, implemented this program at the 4th and 5th grade level at Sharp Senior. It was a very successful program. So once again, not reinventing the wheel, but opportunities to maximize learning, the outside of school time learning that occurred before. iReady challenges, they do this during the school day already, but parents are always wanting more involvement in their students' learning process. And so I'm making this a family event where we host challenges, a week-long, 2-week-long session where families come in and work with our students together on iReady pathways that supplement and support their classroom learning process. Is another thing that we came up with. And then online tutoring services. We have one-to-one device pairing in here, giving the flexibility of families and parents to access learning in their homes and working on equitability issues around those who could participate or those who can't participate based on cost. And so that was the elementary level. At the middle school level, Gear Up offers academic labs both at the middle school and high school level. The research out of colleges, out of Ivy League schools, that tutoring, high-intensity tutoring is the most effective academic intervention that you can give a student. And so that's what they do in the Gear Up academic labs. Not many students come proportional to the academic need in the buildings. And so how can we bolster a service that's high-quality program that not many kids are attending to get more kids in there to foster academic outcomes in that regard. And then...
Do you have an answer for that, or just...
I don't. These are just proposals. And then one of the promising things from summer besides special education was when we disaggregated, especially at the middle school level, our Hispanic and Latino disaggregation of data for that demographic, and then our English language learners actually exceeded their counterparts and vastly exceeded the comparison group of students who didn't come. And so capitalizing on that, and so I think an LTEL debate team would be fantastic because it would be academically rigorous, teaching language skills to students, engaging a cross-section of our student body that doesn't participate currently in after school or in summer, but also valuing a program where when they get to the high school, we'd love to diversify some of the clubs and activities up there. And we can't just expect the students to attend it at the high school. We have to build those programs at an early age. And so that's both experiential and academic based. And then as you look at the middle school experiential cooking classes, drama club at Pioneer. We have a drama club currently at Garrison. It has 40 or 50 kids in it. We don't have one at Pioneer. We can have a drama club at Pioneer. The Blue Mountain Action Council, we helped them write a grant this summer. They have 2 years of comparable ESSER funding. They started art clubs. They're huge at Garrison. We don't have it online yet at Pioneer. Opportunities there to engage kids. Music production. Every single kid that I talk to, says, I love music, right? Everyone loves music. They don't like Western traditional European classic music that's taught in schools. The kids who would be coming to after school, those kids engage that music in our classroom. We have assets and resources in our community to engage students with music experientially. As we move down to Walla, once again, the academic lab there is robust. But the population of Walla is so big that I think expansion could definitely occur there. And then also some experiential activities. And so my rationale, to circle back, Director Rendell, was looking at who these kids were, who I put down here as participating in after school, and then visualizing and knowing the kids who are not coming, and saying, how can we find opportunities to engage them to attend?
Yeah, I guess what I was really trying to get at is it would be nice to have an outline of what you think is going to happen so that we can look back at some point and revisit and say, okay, these were the things that we were hoping for.
Yeah.
How did this isn't as easy to do that.
Yeah.
We don't have any
Good question. It depends on how much effort or how much money we want to put into these, and so kind of this was here's what I've come up with. I think these would be good options, and to see kind of what your reaction was as school board and say, yeah, these things really resonate with us, or not, or, you know, dig deeper and ask the questions, you know, yeah.
I know that, I'm sure my mother isn't listening because she doesn't tune in, but, as a retired home ec teacher when it was home ec then, she will absolutely talk about how critical the skills and what she taught, you know, the cooking, I can't stop thinking about how the cooking experiential is positive for, I mean, you can take that with the literature and the language, you definitely can go with the math, and you create life skills and talents. You know, I'm with you on that 100%.
Yeah, the hard part is, in my mind, great data questions, super excited for our data potential moving forward. Our strategic plan was a 5-year process, right? And over that time, we showed significant outcomes over that 5-year process. And the hard part though is, how do we differentiate each of these interventions in those positive outcomes as being successful to the data that was outcome based? And so that's the question you're asking me for Summer Soul, and that's a question you'll be addressing in the strategic plan. And so the answers I hope that you come up with on how we're going to measure a 5-term arc of achievement, and then what strategies within that 5-year term actually prove successful or not. So it's all about linking the services we provide with the data that comes of it. It's a very difficult ask. Summer learning, research says it takes at least 3 years of consistent participation in summer programming to influence significant academic change. So we went through 1 summer. There's 2 more summers of opportunity where realistically, based on academic level research, will we start to see academic improvement in a summer program.
I think the whole discussion is structured a little bit, honestly. I don't think the board should be deciding what cooking classes versus robotics teams. I don't think that's our strength or our role. I think we need to define the goals, what we're trying to achieve. And then staff come back and say, we are confident that this is the best we can do to achieve those goals. And then we move forward on funding it, and then we measure our achievement against those goals. And what I'm seeing here is isn't structured to allow that. Parts of this resonate with me. I love hearing that we might actually adopt something new, which did extremely successfully before the consolidation there. But that's the process we need to go through as a board. This is way too in the weeds. And I don't feel confident in the recommendation.
So an option may be, and just throwing out an option for you, President Ryder, and the rest of the board. I mean, I know we have an upcoming board study session here in the next couple of weeks. Maybe that could be an opportunity for the board to define outcomes. Because again, I think what I hear again maybe resonate with many of you, and what I think Brent tried to produce was, we heard more and more experiential this summer. That's what we tried to provide. Maybe that's a different direction that you want to go. Do you want experiential? Do you want as many kids participating as possible in our schools, or do you want to focus on targeted groups? After school programming, you want to focus on academics versus experiential. That determines, are we tutoring or are we cooking, right? And so those are the sort of things that we need that guidance from you. And so maybe that would be an opportunity for the board to wrestle with outcome in. I mean, you got an expert right here, 17 years in after school programming. Let him know what you want. I know he can develop an amazing program and a way to measure success long term with that.
I really echoing what Director Sarley said. I mean, I'm not qualified to decide. That's not what I feel my strength is. What I would like to see is the board come up with some goals. You guys figure out as administration what it is that's going to do that, and support that with some sort of evidence that you believe, and then we measure. That really is the process. I agree.
So I think to a degree, goals, which was participation and the goal to not engage the classroom teachers and such. And so, to a great degree, I kind of hear taking that charge. Now, do I see hardcore academics? And if that's, you know, I mean, I know that the real key thing is to help our kids attain that academic success. But I think part of that attaining the academic success is going to be some soft participation in things that are just not going to be as easy to define that way. So part of, if I were going back, I would say, focus on the participation, and are we getting the participation of the people that we need to? We know that social and emotional, you know, we talked about how important that was, that we're lobbying for more support in that area. And just a summer where they can get together and not have to be 6 feet apart, and please let the mask, the state allow us to take the mask off the kids and outside and such. I think there's tremendous value in that. And so, you know, I don't know how you measure that. I mean, we struggled 5 years ago to say, how do you measure participation if it wasn't in a sport? So some of these things are hard to measure.
I appreciate you laying this out, what this looks like. I agree that we do need to set goals, but this helps me to visualize what's really going to be happening, because, you know, we need to know. If we're going to say this is what we're going to do, we don't just want to have a goal, we want to know what's the tangible things that are going to come out of this. So I appreciate this really helps me to see what an after-school, you know, programming would look like versus the summer soul. I also agree that you can't quantify some of this stuff. You know, you can't look at data for some of this stuff. And it does take more than one summer to say, was there an outcome? The whole part of engaging students is finding things that relate to them. And this is non-traditional learning, you know, so, you know, in a cooking class, you're still learning math, you're learning a language, you're learning skills that are really important to an academic, more traditional setting. So I think it's very valuable. So I think what we need to do is decide, how do we want to put all of this money into a summer program, or do we want to break it up and then set the goals for what we want to see. But I don't think that our goals should be completely data driven, because I just think we're going to fail in that. I think there is value in data, but I think there's also value in students feeling like they belong and that are showing up.
Here.
Some direction.
I think it's going to be really hard to go with a lot of hard academics in the summer if you don't have the certified staff there. And so, I, like Kathy, I really appreciate seeing what it looks like. I don't want to get down into the weeds with it. I just like to see what it looks like and what the picture is. So I appreciate that. I don't have suggestions, even though I've been a teacher all my life. I don't have suggestions for this, because I think, you know, this is something that you and your staff need to come up with. But I do appreciate seeing. And I think an experiential summer, I think we need another one. Yeah, I really think we need another one. I think we need after school stuff too. And looking at this after school program is good. I like doing that. As for siphoning some money off for after school, maybe a little bit. Just, you know, just a little bit of the money.
It can be spent for after school. So currently, this isn't the total amount of funds. We're funding Bernie's after school program, which doesn't have 21st century funding out of the same funding stream. So the students at Bernie now have equitable access to a school-funded after-school program, which is really exciting. And, you know, I guess 2 points for me, being biased in after-school education for 17 years, is it's really about access and opportunity, and around equitability of access and opportunity. So students who attend K-12 who are not low-income students outside of school, they have about $100,000 more extracurricular opportunity over that time period than kids on free and reduced lunch have. That's not measured. That's sports practices they might attend, dance lessons they might do outside, private music lessons, going on, trips or camps or whatever. That's not measured. But I think that has a big effect on those students' desire to learn and grow and whatever. And so I take that as a participation-based goal for me, because we can provide equitable access for extracurricular opportunities that ignite a passion in learning for students. In addition, I read a research paper on what inspired Nobel laureate scientists, and 3 out of 4 of them said it was opportunities outside of school that ignited their passion in a subject area. And so once again, that goes to an equitable framework. As a public education institution, should we take an approach of equitable access to extracurricular opportunities that could create lifelong learners and have a kid stick with it, fight tooth and nail, get D's all the way through, that they graduate high school and go on to something as a result of experiential activity. And so, once again, long-term longitudinal data over time, but it's also going to take, in my mind, a commitment to saying we're going to do this, and we're going to do it with high quality, but let's commit to it and know that we have to measure it over time, just like a strategic plan, we have to measure it over a 5-year period of time, right?
I don't want to be impolite, I don't want to push this too far, but when you were running 21st Century, you did run that for 5 years. And we had the conversation in this boardroom about academic outcomes. They didn't show up over that 5-year time. Now, there were other benefits, but the academic outcomes didn't show up. And I think,
I never measured longitudinally, though. We didn't have the data capacity to measure longitudinally. We would report year in and year out outcomes for students, a snapshot in their career. We never tracked them. We've had 17 years of 21st century in our district. We've never tracked a kid from first grade all the way through to say, did they graduate as a result of after-school programming, right? We have not done that. The federal and state mandate is only just report data for each specific year, but it's reliant upon us to create studies and longitudinal data systems and access data that can give us the information that you're asking for. And currently, we're not doing that. We didn't currently have the capacity to do that. So the reports that we would give you are representative of a snapshot of one academic year.
And it never moved the needle. I think we have to, I get it. Participation's great, we need kids to be participating. We need to have a shared understanding of the crisis we face. The 2 years off from school, and it's not as bad here, right? We know that our online remote learning model, hybrid model, the very simple one through. We've seen the data, and we're very happy about the fact that our kids declined less. Like, we did a better job providing distance learning than most places did. And that's awesome. That is a credit to all of the staff. It is a credit to the parents who push their kids in front of the every day. Credit to the kids who power through. Right, so that's fantastic. But that just means we're better than everybody else. It doesn't mean those kids aren't deeply in trouble. And so we can say participation matters, and that's all great. If a kid can't read by 3rd grade, we all know the research on what that shows. And we can look at our data right now and look at how many 2nd graders can't read. We don't have 5 years to catch them up. So I'm not opposed to some of these things. Engagement is huge. I was talking to a parent recently about just keep your kid engaged, keep them in school in different districts. In the long run, they can figure it out. Incredibly important, let's fund those things. But let's make really, really strategic choices about this is a crisis. We need to fix it as soon as possible. And if there's money left over for other stuff, that's great. We can't let those yellow and red bars just keep going every year.
I agree with that, but is this where we're only grading that, so to speak? Like, I see this as like not even, it's not relevant in some ways, because this is engaging kids outside of the traditional learning environment in a different way, which is what's been presented to us. So what are you proposing we do with this money differently? Because I just don't understand where it's coming from.
Yeah, I would like to see us focus very heavily on academic achievement. So a great example, again, I really want to avoid the temptation of saying, hey, I like this one piece of the plan, because that's not my job, that's not my expertise. But when Mr. Cummings said, hey, this is the after-school tutoring model that worked at Blue Ridge, my eyes kind of lit up, because Blue Ridge had, until we consolidated, 2 or 3 years of incredibly strong data among their kids. That school was high functioning, and I always kind of wondered how they did. I mean, it was pretty impressive. I was very sad to see it go, and I was hoping those best practices would go across the district. If that's one of them, and if principals believe in it, I'd almost rather just give them the money. And I would say, Michelle Carpenter, run this program if you believe. Here's 50 grand. Here's whatever it will take. If a different principal thinks, no, the Blue Ridge model isn't quite going to work, but this is what we think will work here, and this is why, I'd love to see them too. But I'd love to see them say, here's my need. Here's how we're going to achieve it. Here's how you can measure it. And then we come back next year and we say, that's fantastic. Looks like we should spend $20,000 more on that. The academic, it's grant. This is grant, which is fantastic. Thank you for getting the grant. Great work on that. The broader thing here, though, this is ESSER funding, right? Like, this is the federal funding that came to us as a means of, like, filling the gaps that were created by the pandemic. That's why we're having this conversation with the extra money. I don't want to see it spent on things that aren't going to make significant, measurable impacts on kids' learning lives.
The only thing again I would say is it's gonna be hard if you're gonna get the certificated staff, time this summer. You need to, if you're gonna have those hard academic successes, you've gotta have certificated staff doing the tutoring, teaching, whatever it is. And, college kids are fine, volunteers are fine, but nothing can replace certificated staff.
Yeah, the research and data says that certificated learning experts are necessary for the high tutoring function.
Right. So if we're gonna do that, if that's the direction we decide we need to go, then we're gonna have to put out the money to hire certificated staff to do it.
One thing, and I know we're probably going way over time, I'll let you, manage the clock, President Lattery. I think we got 2 things to look at. One is, what do we want to do from a summer perspective? And I think we've given Brent some pretty clear direction. We don't want to expect, we can't put that burden on our classroom teachers to teach all summer long. They need a break. Develop again, experiential program, which I think he's done, is far scaled back from what we did last summer. And then give him the time to work with our principals and work with the experts to develop what comprehensive after school programming could be next year. I really think if we're focusing on academics, after school is going to be a much better lever than a summer school program. Just because of the staffing burden, the access. We got captive kids, they're at our school at 2:30, having to keep them there and get them a bus ride home afterwards versus trying to coax kids coming over summer, which was, as Director Randolph pointed out, was very difficult. Some of the most needy kids, we just couldn't get them to our school site during the summer, but we got them during the daytime. We might be able to keep them there after school. So that might be an opportunity to give right now two directions. One is develop a experiential summer program. If you're generally in favor of what we talked about there, I think $400,000 to $500,000 of the $1.6 million. We got a ton of where we have to spend this money, so we probably need to look at some sort of opportunities to resource something this summer and give him time to develop over the next month or 2. Come back to you with some more comprehensive after-school look for academics and ways to measure that and ways to to engage our principals in that process.
Okay, wait, are we robbing Peter to pay Paul?
What's that?
If we're gonna have the experiential summer experience, are we robbing the after-school programs significantly?
Well, you got roughly $6 billion. I think
It's $900,000 this year, but there's indirect money there.
Yes.
So the amount of money that we actually have this year is around $780,000 maybe. We took a chunk of that money to pay for the Burning After School program, which is currently in operation. About $100,000 runs an after school program for you at the elementary level. And then we put $500,000, $600,000 based on my projections of this proposal. There's also 100% carryover in this grant. And so I was conservative in this, so there could be some money left over for carryover for next year. And then next year, they gave us $900,000 this year. It's $700,000 next year, so it's less money next year. And so I was
Yeah, I didn't see those figures, and that's why I asked that question, because it concerns me a bit that we might come up short with our after-school program if we go too much into this program, finance this to the extent we are.
So So currently our after-school programs are totally funded except for burning off 21st Century Community Learning Center Initiative, which is a separate 5-year grant process outside of ESSER. And so this ESSER funds is additional funds to those programs except for burning. Yeah.
Not exactly on topic, but tangentially, Director Sarley, you mentioned Blue Ridge. And after attending the PLC conference, I don't think that's what they called it there, but they probably have the best PLC program of any place in the district at Blue Ridge. They were all moving as a whole, and I think that's, when we broke that up, it didn't follow through. And so that's something that I would like at some point to maybe move back into.
So we're, looking at a scheduling and timing, and the anxiety that we're feeling as a board. Where do you feel, Mr. Cummins, that we need to provide you and to move forward, to accomplish something? Because we don't want to just say, we are having a hard time and we're not the experts, and then let the opportunities go by.
So last year I was hired March 1st in a new position, or took a new role March 1st, and the month of March was spent planning and having discussions with stakeholder, and so I had 2 months to plan summer school after that to actually do the logistics. This year I was hoping we could get logistics ahead of time because we put a lot of pressure on our departments, teaching and learning, transportation, special education, and the data collection. And so my timeline was hopefully earlier than that. If we ran a summer program, I would like to open registration right after spring break and close registration a little earlier, about mid-May, to give the transportation and facilities the logistical time that they need to take that pressure off. But if we can't come up with that, we can move to a time frame where by the end of March, I would need direction, or we'd have a decision.
We've got a meeting March 1st, and we have some opportunities. Do you feel, have we left you so wishy-washy that you could you do some refining by March 1st, based upon what we've heard here?
So what I heard is we want specific goals as measured by very specific outcomes, and so what I could do is work with Superintendent Smith and some of the departments here, and then Chris Garcia and some of the data that we utilize for our strategic plan, and say, if we were going to supplement and bolster these outcomes, what are the goals we would set around those over the course of the summer or extended school year, whatever option that might be. And so start with the goals and what is it we actually want to do framework first, and could probably have a good idea of what those are March 1st.
I think so. And then I also heard some interest in, and I don't know, I'm not wrapping my head around, but maybe pushing the support more into the after school and a little less in the summer if we think, depending upon how that could look. So just makes them see how that could look. So are we comfortable with, he's accepted the challenge to do some modification, which is the right thing to do, but they asked to come back on the March 1st meeting. And of course, if you get this out just a little ahead, maybe that'll give us some time to digest and to do a better job of helping you anticipate if we're going in the right direction. Am I getting some consensus on the board there on that?
Yeah, I asked for a couple of pages of document that just outlines, really walks us through your thought process, what your goals are. The pieces of it aren't as important to me, but what is the reasoning for this? I understand what you're telling me, but I really like outline in a format that I can spend 5-10 minutes reading and understand it.
Okay.
move on, okay.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Director Taylor, we have been waiting patiently to share us all the good news that you have to bring to us.
Well, I think I heard something earlier about the reds and yellows, so we do have all these colors. Yes, we do have those. So, Principal Latterer, Superintendent Smith and Board, this is just the December financial report, and if we start with our revenues for December, you can see that we kind of have a flip-flop of our local taxes from November to December. Overall, though, our collections for the 2 months are ahead of what we had projected by about $60,000. Our local non-tax continues to pretty much be in line with the projections. State general purpose, we continue to lag behind there. In part, I have about half a dozen state small grants that we have received, but they haven't given us the full final approval yet, so we can't start making claims on those. So we'll eventually catch up with the grant awards as we're able to start spending those throughout the rest of the year. And then with our federal general purpose and federal special purpose, again, we're fairly aligned with what the projections were. The same with local school district revenue. I'm going to speed up a little bit here, so just because I know we're running late. So our total for the month of December, we were at 6.9 million of actual versus 7.2 million of projected. That gives us a rolling variance of just over $1 million with a monthly variance of 320,000 for an overall variance of 4%. We'll continue to probably see that for the next couple of months until we catch up with our grant claims, which, looking back over last year, that kind of was our trend as well. We kind of have a gap from November to March until we start to see some of those collection rates catch up. And for expenditures, so last year and this year, our difference between November and December payroll was actually about 11% from actual payroll, but our projected trends for the year last year, we had projected, again, the trend that we look at is over about 4 years. The trend has been about 22% difference between November and December payroll, and this year we were actually at about 24% difference. Part of that is kind of the accumulation of the variance in salaries. We're paying more for our substitutes this year. We're getting more subs when we can, and just some of those differentiations there. And so overall, the difference between the monthly payroll, obviously we were running a little bit higher this month. Luckily, we have that offset with our accounts payable. Again, we kind of flip months for our actual accounts payable projections, and between November and December, we had anticipated in November we'd be at 1.3, actuals were 1.8. This month we kind of did the same thing, had a higher projection than what actual was. So overall, our variance for expenditures for the year, we are running an accumulation of 440,000, and for the month of just under $2,800, so just a 4% variance for the month of December. And then for our monthly ending fund balance, again, not pretty colors, but looking at, again, last year, and so I'll have to kind of go back to the drawing board when we go into next year. But from November through February, the variances were last year as well as this year, kind of putting us in the red. As you can see, our revenue, we are lagging behind in our revenue collections versus projections. Our expenditures are about the same. Our overall fund balance, though, you can see we're dipping quite down, ending this December with 5.6. We're going to hover around that for next month. February, we should see that bounce back up as we look to get more of our ESSER claims coming in through grant claims. I know for this month, I had about 1.5 million in claims for grant claims versus our average for the last couple of months has been around 600,000 to 700,000. So we will start to see, starting in February, our claim rates getting a little bit higher, particularly for ESSER funds. And as I say, the variance, we seem to experience this as well last year, where we were lagging behind in what our projections were versus what reality was. And so we are looking at ending fund balance for December of 5.87%, which is of course below our 6% ending fund balance policy. And we will be there for the next couple of months, but again, throughout the rest of the year, we will pick back up as we get into spring and we start to see those revenues coming back in. And have had conversations with departments about their expenditures and what they have looking at for the end of the year. Through the end of the year, what's really essential, what's not, so that we can make sure that we're trying to balance off what those expenditures are against what our anticipated revenues are. Questions, and I'll kind of sit through that.
So at one point, I heard that we may need to dip into some ESSER funds to backfill this, to get back to, is that still something we're looking at, or have done, or?
Yes, we have done that. So what we looked at was, were those positions that we were currently still funding out of basic ed that were more social emotional based positions. So the K-3 learning specialist, we had been charging those to basic ed. We have moved those into ESSER funds because they fall under that category. So we've moved about $400,000 of salary in January, and so that's when, again, we lagged a month behind in claims, so that's where in February we'll start to see those additional claims coming in. And that 400,000 was the difference in what we projected we were not going to be using for summer soul. So instead of focusing those ESSER funds for summer, we've moved them and we've looked at the staffing that we can transition now and make those claims on.
And so a lot of what we're seeing, or part of what we're seeing, is kind of the consequences of the lower enrollment. And that's just where it is. We had hoped we would have more students.
Right.
And we have the teachers that we've committed to, and they're teaching wonderfully small classes. But especially now, the reduced allocations from the state are kind of creeping in. And you're kind of doing some adjustments as you can, but there's only so much you can do.
Well, and again, with the projections that we do, we did the adjustment in first part of November for January going forward, looking at what the apportionment dip would be. But the original projections were based still on a higher FTE than what we started with. And so that's where some of those calculations, we've got that gap between what projections were and what actuals are. So we've adjusted going forward those projections, but to keep this a static picture, I guess, we're not going back and adjusting things every month. What we are trying to account for is, again, with the ESSER dollars in particular, can we repurpose funds that we've targeted for something else into using them now to help shore up our basic ed dollars.
And obviously, topic of our next discussion, visiting with President Leiter about our next board meeting about budget and having a chance to sit back and review the ESSER, where are we? And of course, by then, hopefully, if the enrollment stabilization comes through, that would be $1 million, not to go back onto this. That would change loads overnight. And so some of these things we're kind of waiting on the legislature too to see what impacts those may have retroactively. This is the example of, again, we're down 100 students. We budget 55-75. We have 54-86, I think, as of today. And so this is a 100 kid downfall, $1 million shortfall in the budget.
What's the estimate on transportation tax?
We really don't have a clear estimate of what that's going to
No,
be.
primarily it's, so a couple of the different things that I've seen is, in part, the transportation fix is to address the allowability of electric buses to be on the depreciation schedule, and then also I think some portions of the charging station or something. But similar to
specialized, I think Derek's already referring to one of the three
bills, special ed.
Right, for special ed, have not seen what that would look like. The only thing dollar-wise is that putting us back again to that 1920 STARS funding model, because again, if we're going to be funded based on our current ridership, that's going to be substantially down ridership and mileage. So that's the big fix, is if they go back to the 1920 enrollment, then we'll have that stabilization of what our current funding is, because for budget purposes, they have a lot of that. So what we budgeted in transportation is more generous than it would have been if we didn't have that enrollment.
Seems to be a lot of budget discussion or
Yeah.
work session. We're right in our budget season.
Yeah. Any other questions?
So we've got two more chunks, preliminary budget preparation and planning discussion and strategic planning discussion. I know that we certainly did put this agenda together anticipating that we'd be at that point at a quarter to state.
So I can be as expeditious as you would like us to be, or like me to be, President Lowry.
I know that we've got an executive session.
Would you like a motion to shorten the agenda by 2 items?
Well, I think we can talk about it briefly.
Right. I think both of these are very explanatory. Obviously, the budget enrollment there, this is something that I think we're going to be revisiting at our upcoming board meeting, because we need your direction on what assumptions you want us to use for a student FTE load. Remember, FTE pretty much drives 95% of our budget, whole state, also federal. This has fingers across all of them. And so again, you've got the giant Excel sheet in front of you. I just would highlight you to take a look at this, digest this. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact myself, Assistant Superintendent Garcia, or Director Taylor. The biggest one is really the middle one with all the red arcs is again, us right-sizing our district based off of, we now have projected next year almost 500 students less than we had 5 to 6 years ago. And this is not impacted Falls Place Public Schools. Their high school already been open, those kids are already gone. This is the impact of our aging, graying community. We still have less kids in our school system. And how do we deal with that and resonate with that based on where we're moving forward? So again, initial budget assumptions right now, we're currently 5489. We are anticipating 5382 next year, or at least beginning our preliminary assumptions based on that, and then wait for the direction from the board based off of that, simply rolling up the kids we currently have now.
Where are these students coming from? Are they evenly distributed, or are they,
we would say students in red. It's just the difference from one year to the next. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, where across grade levels are
big senior graduates? Well, we're graduating 450, 500 kids, we're bringing a kindergarten class of 350 kids. There's 100 kids right there. And we're seeing that roll-up effect.
but it's spread across every.
Spread pretty much across. If you look down the second column, you can kind of see 451 seniors, 465, 447, 427, 371, 370, 399, 337. You can kind of see this shrinking student population. And what we've been talking about for years and years and years is what happens when those 350 kids are replaced by 450 kids at the senior to upper level high school levels. And that's that challenge we're dealing with, and it's very similar to many defining enrollment districts are having to deal with as these kids matriculate through our system. Of course, our biggest impact this year was we were fully anticipating our kindergartners and first graders to come back to pre-pandemic normal numbers, which clearly they did. We're at the 330 or so level. So that's something we're obviously working with Chris Garcia, the staffing. This is where we need your input and guidance, kind of wrestle with how many second graders do you think we're going to have next year? Are some of our first graders that held out this year going to come as second graders next year or not? Because we've got contracts to let no later than May 15th of this year for next year's staffing. And so again, we're right in that time where we need to have these good conversations around budget assumptions, because you see, we can't continue the rate we are right now in deficit spending. Right? Our income balance simply will not take it. We're not in line with your minimum threshold. We'll get it back up by the end of this year, but we can't have that impact again next year. So.
And of course, we know that the K numbers get kind of messy with pre-K.
Yeah, yes, pre-K kids there too.
Yeah, so we have to be conscious of that. And I've wondered aloud to many of you and to Mr. Garvey and such. We know that the state requires kids to be known by the time they're 8, which
not that they have to be enrolled in a school, you know, public school, but they have to be known as being and then there's accountability for homeschooling and such. And those kids are the 2 years that we're missing. So is, you know, how is that gonna change? Is they, you know, will we see that a little bit of a bump there now that we have 8-year-olds that, have, and we don't know, you know, I mean, that doesn't seem to be something that's a big communicated thing, and historically, they've said, you know, we've gotten kids because that's what you do, you enroll them in kindergarten, but the pandemic interrupted all of that, and so, you know, where are those kids? That's one of the big nationwide mysteries.
So the March board meeting, I would anticipate, again, pending your direction, that we need to have some really good, solid discussions around this, ESSER funding, long-term planning, and hopefully have some clarification from the state as well as some of these funding possibilities for us.
I can throw one more discussion item on that. You know, the short, next year is what matters most, but, you know, should we start having a conversation about what Walla Public School looks like at 4,100 people? Because as long as I've been on the board, we've kept saying, well, maybe it'll bounce back. You know, we had a great recession, you know, maybe 400 kids are enrolled, but then we got a year with 420 and we said, oh, maybe that's not. Do we need to start actively planning for a budget and a system that reflects maybe it, bring 90 kids every year, and that's just where we are?
That's a good point.
Some more to come there.
So more to come, yeah. And
Sorry,
no.
Okay. All right, so moving on to the last item.
Yeah.
Okay, the last item is simply, again, in lieu of time, I won't go over this report. Thank you for asking us to put this together. This is a great opportunity. I think a celebration of your success, our district success, our community success, and our strategic plan. To have 14 of the 15 indicators you identified as being, showing either strong growth or meeting or exceeding your 2022 goals. Again, excited about where you and the community will take us the next 5 years, and hopefully having, again, solid ways by which to measure success and program success. And hopefully, Mr. Cummings will have something for our summer school and after school program with similar sort of benchmarks, so we can really gauge our opportunities and our progression moving through. Any questions around this report?
It feels a shame to do it so short.
I know
it's foundational for the
It's amazing.
framework.
Yeah, it's
I would like to maybe re-up Dr. Rendell's suggestion that we go off of this. That's the wrong word, I understand, don't Robert told me. We at least make sure we include it. I'd like to go through this again.
This is pretty exciting. This is a
I spent a lot of time going through like those 35, 40 pages, so I am totally comfortable with.
Next meeting, maybe?
With,
we have nothing on it right now, pre-scheduled for next meeting. Budget, after school, summer school, strategic plan, and hopefully by then we'll have an equity update for you as well.
So to accomplish that, you know, I may be president, but I'm not the expert. What do we need to do?
We're fine.
We're fine, okay, I don't want to run about. So at this point in time, at 7:55, we have a recess to an executive session. Anticipate that, what do you think, guys, 45 minutes or so? Approximately 45 minutes, go.
So reconvene, you have the reconvener check panicking here at 8:40? 8:40? Check back in at 8:40?
No later than 8:40.
No later than 8:40?
40.
Or to extend the meeting, or you'll close it out at that point?
At that point. So I will set my alarm. Board, if you want to take a 3 or 4 minute, as I often say, bio break.